The dust is settling from the earth-shattering election, but crypto is making earthquakes all its own, with Bitcoin racing to new all-time highs. With the two being so connected at this point in time, we thought it would be good to bring back a friend of the show who is intimately acquainted with crypto and the Trump campaign. Oz Sultan has spent a lot of time in technology and politics, so you're sure to gain some useful insights as we head into what we believe may be the most prosperous 4 year period of our lives. We're making podcasts great again on episode number 751 of the Bad Crypto Podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition.
Who's bad?
It's going to be morning in America for years to come, folks. Welcome to the Bad Crypto Podcast. Joel Comm here, Travis Wright. They're both Sir Lords in the tradition of knighthood, and what else would that be in the tradition of?
Lardships. Lard asses.
Lardships, that's it. Man, how you doing?
You know what? It's good. It's a lot of crazy stuff going on as we're watching this, and we're gonna have a lot of conversation in this podcast around the state of this, right? Because Oz is pretty connected in with the Republican Party. He's been doing it for a long time. And we're seeing Bitcoin do its thing, right? We're seeing it bounce off of 90, almost hitting 90,000. It's hit $89,864 twice.
Yeah, let's
And
take a
so,
moment to appreciate this. The total crypto market cap as of 6:35 Atlantic Standard Time on the 12th of November, $3.09 trillion.
which is an all-time high. That's not actually the all-time high. It's been higher than that. But the previous cycle's all-time high was $3,069,000,000,000.
Hmm.
And so I saw it earlier today. The highest I've seen it was like 3.12 trillion. That's the highest I've seen it so far. But yeah.
Bitcoin's 88,318. It's funny, the interview that you're going to hear today, we did just a few hours ago, and Bitcoin was 89 or so. The volatility, the swings, we've talked about how we could expect this. And I remember it wasn't that long ago we were saying, it's not going to be too far off before we start seeing $5,000 days or $10,000. We had our first $10,000 day yesterday, and it was magnificent. It was glorious. It was like, it's 80. Oh, it's 81. Nope, it's 84. Hey, it's like every thousand. I was sending you a message and like, we're gonna hit 90. I just know it, and boom, there it was. And we're breaking down the walls and shattering glass ceilings.
Yeah, if you look at what the price was the day before the election, it was like $67,400, right? And so over the course of the next week, it popped up to roughly $89,800. And so that was like a $22,000 week, bro. 7 days, the price of Bitcoin went up $22,000. And
That's
then
crazy.
that last pop, it went up from like 81. It wasn't quite a $10,000 day. It was like about an $8,000 day, but pretty big. I mean, I remember early on, 2017, we were talking that. I was like, dude, we're gonna see a time where there's gonna be $5,000, $10,000 pops on Bitcoin day after day after day. And I think we're not too far. So 90,000, big psychological block for people. You can see there's a lot of sell orders right there, and it's bouncing people off, and it tries to retrace, but it's not going down too far. It went down to the retrace of what, 86, yeah, 80, 85, 9. So that was a new sort of pop, try to get over it, and then it's gonna bust through 90,000, and then somewhere in the 99,000 range is gonna be another drop off because there's another big psychological wall there. Once you get past 100,000, Joel, I think it's all new price discovery
It
because
is.
where is it? Where's the block? Where's the
Yeah.
walls going to be? The 20,000 increment block's going to be 120,000, 125,000? Like, We don't know. It's
Where are
a
you going
price
to get
discovery.
constipated with your price? Yeah, so I predict that in November, before this month is out, we hit 100,000, and I'm going to go with 1.25, maybe 130 for December. I think the anticipation of the inauguration that's going to take place in January with Trump taking over as the Bitcoin president, with a new head of the SEC, hopefully Hester
Mhm.
Peirce, and clarity on this regulation, with the U.S. probably taking on Bitcoin as a reserve asset. And just the fact that we are in the bull part of the cycle, like it just happens to all coincide together. I think that we are in for a crazy run, and I'm going to up my estimates now. I was calling the all-time highs to be about 150. I'm going to go with in the 200s now,
Mm.
maybe even hitting 300,000.
Yeah, and depending on how the cycle goes with more governments coming in and creating their own strategic Bitcoin reserves, it could be much higher than that. It could be like Plan B was saying, hitting $1 million this cycle. I wouldn't bet on that. I would say though, I could see us hitting 500,000 if you got all these countries that are coming in and buying it. And
Hmm.
I could also see the bull run and the bear run being different finally. Like we thought it might be the case this last time. Not necessarily the case, but I'm going to predict that in January 20th, I just have a feeling that Bitcoiners have a funny sense of humor, so I could see it being $147,000 on inauguration day,
Right,
just because they're smartasses.
right.
But then I could see February being a month where it dips pretty substantially and then coming back up. But not financial advice. That's just saying stack sats, baby. And I can see a time in the future. We've talked about this before. I can see a time in the future where the Satoshi is no longer the smallest unit of a Bitcoin. I can see the Satoshi being divided into 100 units, right? So another couple decimal points over time because they're
What
not
would
going
you
to be more
call it?
Bitcoin.
The mini Toshi?
No, I actually thought about this because I'm in the process of I'm doodling down some ideas for a book of
The
like
micro Toshi?
no, it would be like the Nakamoto and it would be the Moto and it would probably be called a moat.
Oh, how many moats you got?
You
Well,
got a
listen,
hundred moats in a Satoshi.
I want to talk more about this, but we got a guest here who's just waiting right around the corner, and I want to hear what he's got to say. So you guys are going
Yep.
to want to listen in to our buddy Oz Sultan. It's been a long time since our current guest today has been with us. I think it was 2020 the last time he was on the show. Our friend Oz Sultan, the wizard himself. Good sir, how are you?
Aloha. It's good to see you guys. I
Yeah, you've been through a lot. I know,
have been through the ringer.
we've kept in touch here, but kind of giving people a little heads up. You've been working in financial and security tech for about 25 years now. You've been in
Hmm.
political marketing, and you are the CSO of Sultan Interactive Group, blockchain, XR, and big data consultancy with a focus on emerging tech and political data. You're working on some cool Bitcoin mining stuff right now, and you've also been um, connected to what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I want to talk about all that, but I also want to say you have been dealing with cancer for the past few years, and are
Yep.
now on the
4 years.
back side of it, and you seem to look good.
Thank you. I have all my hair back, which is nice. I was also one of the few that refused to shave my head, so I just looked psychotic in the middle of it. I also did it happened like as COVID kicked off, so I spent a year and a half in the hospital, another year and a half kind of working, convalescing from bed. This is the first year that I've been actually able to get back into things. Cancer is tremendously expensive and will gut you financially. If anyone's dealing with it, my heart goes out to you. And at the same token, it's coming on the backswing of it, right? I've got 6 more months of therapy, and I'll be in remission. It's strange. I just have to tell you that much because you're participating from things from afar, and we can do a lot of things virtual now, but it's just not the same. but looking forward to being more engaged. We've got a couple projects I was able to ramp up while I was in a hospital bed, including the mining thing we'll talk about. But for a good chunk of this year, I've been involved in the re-election efforts for Donald Trump. And we came to a really cathartic sort of, like culmination of all this work on November 5th.
We
So I'm
won,
rather
bitches.
delighted,
We won.
rather delighted about all this. And also, I think it's going to be great for Bitcoin. I think it's going to be good for regulations. It looks like Crypto Mom is going to be helming things at the SEC, which we've wanted for years. I've met her a couple of times and listened to her talks. I think she's got the right attitude on this. I also think that, what Giancarlo had talked about with the CFTC, which has been halted, like he was like, banks, they can custody crypto. And there were injunctions that were put on this, not just regulatorily, but also under the Biden administration. I think those are going to go away. And if you think about this, we have 35 to 40% of Black America, a good chunk of Brown America, and a good chunk of minority America is super happy to use crypto, right? But they still don't trust the banking establishment. So there's a big opportunity here inside of this administration to really set the tone for the 21st century, not just from the perspective of economics, but really like how we operate and spend money and, where we go to strengthen the dollar. And I mean, TW, I know you talk about this a lot. But if you were really to look at what the Federal Reserve was supposed to do from its creation, we're talking about a dollar worth 3.1 cents versus where we started over the course of 100 years. And under Biden, we were getting 1%, depreciation a month against the BRICS and everyone else. And people saying, we're not settling in dollars anymore. And that's all ending, which is just, I don't know, this is brilliant. It's like a new era.
It is like a new era. And I went to perplexity.ai and I asked it when the last time you was on the show. It says February 2019. So I know you were actually, I think you were on the virtual blockchain week we did. So that might have been where we were thinking 2020 because we were having conversations then, but maybe on Bad Crypto 5 years ago, bro. So it's
So
been
2019, I ran for office, and then after I ran for office and helped Brock out with his presidential run, I got cancer and went straight into the hospital.
well, we can say F cancer, and we are glad that you are on that rebound. We'll just send you good, positive energy. When
Thank
I
you,
think of
brother.
Oz Sultan, I think of great energy, epic beard. Your epic beard is full on back, looking so strangly. That's nice. And we did have Hester Purse on Bad Crypto back in, I'm looking at it, episode 627 of Bad Crypto back in August of 2022. So you're thinking she might be the one that's going to be the head of the SEC?
That's what it's looking like. I mean, Gensler's pretty much in the outs. Obviously,
I'm
all of
gonna
this has
fire him on day one. Everyone
well,
hates Gary Gensler. Everyone knows it. He's a douchebag. He's gone. We're gonna fire him from this administration and hire someone better.
everything has to go through a confirmation approval process, but I
Right.
assume those will happen pretty quick because as opposed to like what happened previously where you have to wait for, the federal government to give you money for your transition committees, he went and privately funded it. And so I don't know how many of the listeners are
Wow,
aware
that's
of this.
that's unlikely. Nobody else has done that, have they? Like privately funding their own transition team?
No, and because there's three groups. There's PIC, which is that's the Presidential Inauguration Committee, right? There's Transition, which is who's going what, where, what agency, that kind of a thing, who's getting appointed, who's becoming, an ambassador, and then there's policy. And what's interesting is like what's going through kind of a shakeout right now. Because in 16, you had Christie's group come up. And I remember I was at Trump Tower when Steve Bannon kind of like gave Christie his walking papers. And then, because I saw him walk out of the office just looking dejected. But basically, they said, that's cool. We won, but it's not going to be your people. It's not going to be the Rumsfelds, 2.0 of the world. But he was given a lot of folks like Kelly that turned out to be problems, and we saw that their outcome was writing crappy books about him. But now I think he's going to have a lot more loyalists around him, and also it's mission driven this time. We're in the fourth industrial revolution. We had 4 years of Biden Harris. We have scant, if any, AI policy out of them. We don't have any blockchain policy. We don't really have strong fiscal policy. We're in 17 wars, and on top of which gas is anywhere between $3 and $7, depending on where you are in the country. It's not viable. All of this needs to change.
But he's
And
literally Hitler, Oz. He's a fascist. He's a rapist and a bigot and a homophobe and all of these things that these people had pounded into them by a corrupted, co-opted media and leftist operatives that have sent these people off the deep end. When you look at these TikTok videos of these women shaving their heads because they think they're going to lose rights, I'm watching people that I've respected in the marketing field just totally go off the deep end.
yeah,
Expecting to be sent to prison camps, and it's insanity. And then when none of that happens, what are they going to do?
it didn't happen in 16. Look, I had an employer at the time as a consulting company. He sat me down and he's like, "What do I need?" This was like right after the election because he knew I was on the Trump campaign. He's like, "What do I need to do? Do we need to sell the company? Do I need to leave the country?" And I was like, "Nothing's going to change." And nothing did change.
Yeah,
And the thing that just strikes me so much about all this is like all these people who are like, fascism, fascism, fascism. Don't you think he would have done it the first time? Like how is he magically going to do all this stuff now?
right.
And honestly, the most bigoted, racist, offensive stuff is coming from the so-called party of tolerance and joy. Like you have liberals out there screaming that they want to deport, Latin American people because they didn't support what they wanted. I,
Right.
I mean, the crux of racism is when you tell a bunch of minorities or a bunch of people who are other than you that if you don't support my view, that there's something wrong with you. And it's all coming out in droves. I mean, the amount of hate that I had gotten before, the number of people in New York City that had told me that Muslims aren't allowed to vote that way, right? And I'm like, please tell me more about my religion. You
Right.
seem to be such an expert,
Right.
you know?
Well, through
That's
all of
crazy.
this,
Yeah, so when he went back to the first time he got in office, he really didn't know many people in Washington D.C., and so he was trying to drain the swamp by hiring all kinds of swampy people, right? And it's like,
It
how do you drain?
wasn't for hiring swampy people. These were people that were recommended to him. I mean, this is
Right.
why heritage isn't being taken seriously. But everyone was screaming Project 2025. The heritage people are more than an arm's length distance from the new administration.
right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
The policies that are going to be implemented are everything that was on the Republican platform that I voted on at the RNC, and it's simple stuff. It's make the country healthy, fixed it. Like, by the way, everyone should be following Food Babe on Instagram because she's following the whole Kellogg's debacle that's going on.
And
Where even
everybody
like
should be
the
following the Maha token on Ethereum as we advise them. And I think that as America becomes more healthy, those types of meme coins around that is going to hopefully pop off because having RFK in there is huge. And that was my point was the
Mhm.
first time he didn't get any of his guys. They were recommending swamp people, including Mike Pence, who was originally a Paul Ryan sort of thing. So
Yep.
they immediately got rid of Mike Flynn, who they didn't want him in there at all. And so this time around, it looks like he's got in a group of people, he's won over a bunch of people. Like you couldn't even talk positively about Trump in previous administrations or wear a red hat. Like I'd wear a Chiefs hat and people are like, oh my God, you're a racist. Oh, wait, that's a Chiefs hat. Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's an Indian. You're a racist. Whatever. Okay, great. But it's just weird. And now they've gotten to the point where and he's getting some pieces in the puzzle going into place, which could shift and change everything for the next 50 years potentially if they get rid of all this rot that's happened inside the government, you know?
Look, it comes back to you need to fix the health situation, which is Kennedy. You need to fix the criminal justice situation, which goes back to Clinton and his three strikes program that's incarcerated two generations of black folks, right? That needs to be cleaned up, as well as recidivism programs. You need to fix the small business administration and getting, grants and program money out to people. And one of the biggest things we saw in New York was, Trump cut a couple $1 billion to come into places like Harlem, to come into Queens, to come into upstate. And it was held up by Cuomo, and then it was held up by Hochul, right? And it went into state super funds. So I think that they're changing the way that they're addressing this. They're changing the way they're approaching it. But the last two big things, the economy and national security, right? The economy, Biden pushed green without actual green jobs, an actual green strategy, and a methodology for people to transition to green. So all it did was jack up oil prices by reducing production. And then on the international stage, I mean, why the fuck are we in 17 wars?
Right.
We are in peacekeeping agreements with 67 countries, but we're not in agreements to just start shelling stuff out. And it's preposterous. The country went into an additional $1 trillion worth of debt just for what? Ukraine and Israel? Like, this is not sustainable.
It's made even more
And
ridiculous because of the fact that Americans are suffering. We're not taking care of our own. We're giving handouts to illegals, and that's going to end. I love this Tom Homan dude. Like, he is the very definition of a
Holman's
man's
amazing.
man, a badass. When the journalist turns to him and says, "What about separating, children from their families?" He says, "Families can be deported together." Like, I expected the sunglasses and the thug life, to show up. Like, all right, this is serious business. What do we think about as far as taxation goes? Do you think it's likely? Well, two questions here around
Mhm.
finances. Do you think it's truly likely that they're going to create a Bitcoin reserve for the U.S., that they're going to follow through on this idea of building up a million Bitcoin? I know RFK wants 4 million Bitcoin in the reserve. And do you think there's a chance that he will strike down the IRS and that we move to a consumption tax?
So I think the reserve is going to happen. There's other countries out there that have 100,000 to at least 1 million Bitcoin themselves. A lot of them are GCC countries, but we also have El Salvador. Venezuela, has at least 35,000 Bitcoin. And we've got some of the European nations that, they sell all their Bitcoin, they buy it back. They sell all their Bitcoin, they buy it back. They can't make up their minds because Ursula von Leyen changes her policy too much. But I think what we'll do is we will get a strategic reserve. I think it'll probably take 12 to 18 months for them to get that set up with Treasury, because there's a lot of policy changes that need to happen, right? And then secondarily, I think doing away with the IRS needs a bit of math, but the tariff solution, just based upon American consumption and the increase of population and the projections from that, could very well work. And that in and of itself is probably going to need 24 months to be implemented,
But
right?
what about this
So,
ridiculous tax code? This what Americans are put through, every year with this tax
mhm,
code. And look, people of means find the legal loopholes. It's like Trump said when he was running back in 2016. He doesn't pay taxes
yep.
because he's smart, right? I live in Puerto Rico and I'm legally not paying capital gains taxes. But the people who are getting the most hurt, how would they get relief?
The people who are getting the most hurt would be benefited mostly by the tariff program, because what we're saying is most of the people in America, what is median income right now? It's about 58K. Most Americans are earning GDP slightly above. So they're earning in between like 48K and 70K. But there's still tremendous amounts of poverty out there, people that are earning under 36,000 as a family. And I think it's about 28,000 as a single person. Those people would see massive increases in take-home pay on day one of the implementation of this, because the federal tax, the FICA, I don't know how Social Security would factor into this. Let's assume Social Security stays because Trump is committed to that, but all your federal taxes would be removed. So interestingly, your higher tax domiciles are going to be places like New York City and New York State, where you have a state tax, and then in New York City it's 11% just for the city, right? Coupled with like I think it's a 3%, it's 8% and three, it's like a 3% state tax. But Philadelphia has an 8% tax. There's a lot of these sanctuary cities that have very high taxes. So instead of you being at a tax load of 30 to 50%, which is where most of America is, right? Even if you're earning all the way up to say 450,000 bucks, I think most Americans that are earning that median, and let's call that 50%, which is 50 to 70K, instead of your take home being like 30 to 40K, your take home is going to be that full 50 to 70 minus your state taxes, maybe Social Security. And I don't know what they're going to do with the insurance portion of that, but all your federal taxes will go away. That's more money in your pocket. That's a better opportunity for you to do things with your family. And that honestly goes back to like what Clinton fucked up. Hillary Clinton screwed up most of America because half of America was happy living that mall rats lifestyle, right? And half of your listeners aren't going to remember that movie. But when they took health care away from minimum wage and increased minimum wage by a couple of bucks, all of a sudden you stuck every single person in America with like a $400 to $600 bill just for health care every month. That's where all of this stems from, right? So, fixing the tax code, then maybe fixing the health code, and, getting America healthy, getting these artificial dyes and things out, we could be back to where we were in the early 90s, late 80s in terms of just the financial benefit to the average American. And things would just boom economically.
I don't know why you keep blaming me. It was that Hillary. Hillary did it all. I was just in the Oval Office getting head, mind my own business, and Hillary that.
I was in the oral office. I did not have sexual relations. Just good times. I did not put that cigar up her hoo-ha. Okay, I did. I did.
Community Notes says.
Yeah. So right. So it has been weird. And so let's maybe take a step back and go, this is bad crypto. So let's maybe bring it back into crypto. We know the world's crazy. It's maybe we dodged a huge bullet. I would say we probably did. What are you thinking as we start, the government start creating strategic Bitcoin reserves? Like, what do you think is going to happen to the price? Like, I mean, we were having conversations about this and we were like, okay, before the election, long before, and probably about the time, a little bit before the halving happened, we're like, okay, it looks like, math is probably the upper end on this bull run's probably 180K. Well, that was before we end up having Elon Musk and RFK Jr. and Trump all together and showing how crypto friendly they are. Now that and then think of all of these companies that have left America because innovation, we've been talking about this since the day we started Bad Crypto. Like, oh, innovation's leaving America. I can't even get a certain token because I'm in America or North Korea or Iran. And so I can't buy into these tokens. So like, give us, how do you think this landscape is going to shift now that we have a crypto friendly regime?
So I think you have to look at two things. Remember the ETF bump that we saw twice inside of the past 2 years?
Yes, sir.
Where it's like, oh, ETFs are going to be approved, and then we see like an 8 to 15% bump in Bitcoin.
We actually had a premature all-time high on Bitcoin, largely because of the FOMO around ETFs.
But you get the altcoins dragged with it, and then they just drop harder. Well, I think what's going to happen is the moment that the reserve is announced, you're going to have countries, not OTC people, because no one has that much Bitcoin, but countries have that much Bitcoin, jockeying to talk to Treasury to figure out how to sell this. But you're also secondarily going to see a tremendous amount of volume in USDC and USDT, right? Because we're now talking about transfer of funds. Like all of this is going to occur in crypto. I think there's going to be less fiat on ramp to it. This is going to drag the breadbasket of near Bitcoin linked currencies with it. So you'll definitely see Ethereum drag up. You'll see a variety of Bitcoin variants drag up with it. And you'll more than likely see, your Trons and other tokens that are utilized inside of cross-border transactions to rise with that as well. But the moment that they start buying, okay, the announcement, I'm thinking an 8 to 12% bump. The moment they start buying, you're going to see a potential up to 18 to 25% bump in the price of Bitcoin, simply because this is the same thing that happened after the ETFs were announced. And all of a sudden, BlackRock and some of these companies out there it's like, well, we have 90,000 Bitcoin in our balance sheet. It's like, well, you had no Bitcoin on your balance sheet 60 days ago. So you're going to see scarcity in the market. You're going to see scarcity in the exchanges, but that's going to be a near-term thing. I think that'll last for probably 3 to 6 months, and then you'll have liquidity again. But this is easily going to buoy Bitcoin up to $200,000. I'm currently of the opinion we could hit 100 by the end of the year, but it's more than likely near the inauguration. But a strategic reserve would get us to 200 really quick.
Well, and just to point out, we're recording this on the 12th of November, and yesterday on the 11th is when everything went ba-boom, and we had our first 10K day, bringing Bitcoin to an all-time high of just over $90,000. There was a sell-off this morning to be expected. We got down to 85 and change, and now we're back to 89, showing there's a lot of strength here. Bitcoin's very strong, and nobody wants to be left out at this point. We're just at the very beginning of this bull cycle, and I'm starting to look at these altcoins and go, man, they're all way below their all-time high. And, if they start picking up, the public comes out and they realize that, wow, Bitcoin's now 150. I missed that opportunity. For now, what's the next big thing? And that's how money rolls into these alts, right? Because they're looking for, what else can I get in on to get my 10x?
Well, you're going to have to figure at some juncture there's going to be a divestment from meme coins, which is the bulk of the market right now. And then it's going to go back into the alts. And if you remember back to like when we were doing those, like global road shows in 16, 17, and 18, that was what it was, is that you would have, a bunch of meme coins, then you have a bunch of alts, then Bitcoin would go up again. And now, but it's stretched out. Like the time frames back then would be weeks. The time frames now are months in terms of your cycles. So I think this meme coin super cycle will give way to, let's call it alt spring, right? And alt spring will be tied very closely in correlation to the uplift on Bitcoin, and also what these projects announce, because your Hederas, your Polygons, your Polkadots, that sort of a thing, they've got new layer 2 opportunities and cross-chain opportunities coming out. All of a sudden, this stuff that was metaverse, which we kind of like shelved because it wasn't really fun to be in there with like 6 other people when they're telling you there's 60,000 daily actives. But those things are giving way to AI systems that are easily integratable with the currency. And I think that's been a big, like holdout for all of these currencies driving additional technologies. If Bitcoin goes that direction, alts will definitely go that direction. And as we get there's a intersection that's going to happen with AI some point next year. And we need on ramps for that. So it's going to be cross chain and on ramps. When that happens, you're going to see just this massive market growth that was really unexpected and unprecedented. And it's really because all the technology can use the technology and pay with the technology, which is what's been holding a lot of this back to this point.
I like to throw maybe a little bit of devil's advocate on what you just said there, because you said the altcoins, we're gonna have altcoin season, meme coins, they're gonna finish their cycle. And I think that maybe once if Hester Peirce gets in and we get some legal framework around utility tokens. I think maybe that will be when it sort of pops off, because Gary Gensler said, "Oh, this has utility, this is security," and so people just said, "I'm just going to create a meme coin that doesn't do shit." It's just a completely empty investment vessel. Invest at your own risk. And then most of them are complete shit coins, right? They're
Hmm.
nothing. And so people are people, if you've seen that video by Murad at the 2049, the token conference, he really went into that. We are in a crazy super cycle right now, and
Yep.
people want shit to be fun. People want things they like to feel like they're part of something. Most of the people who are in crypto are lonely dudes. Let's be real. And they haven't had a big enough bull market to be able to go out and get themselves a nice, sexy Russian woman, right? They don't have enough wins in the bank yet. But and so it seems to me like historically, at least when right now, and
Hmm.
I've led all these different Twitter spaces and chat with all these people, and they seem to think, oh, when you start leading with the tech, that's the most bearish, excuse me, that's the most bearish thing ever. But if you're leading with the promise of some tech, oh, that's super bullish. And so it's so weird what's inside the mindset of people. And I think Gary Gensler, with his utility is a security, it kind of killed that narrative of like, oh, cool things that do great things. Oh no, we don't want that. We just want something funny, an illustrated picture of a frog. Let's go. $10 billion market cap. Like, it's crazy the mentality that's gotten into crypto as a result of stymieing innovation.
Let me throw this out there. I concur to a degree with what you're saying, but I think that looking at what the Swiss are doing and looking at what happened in Bermuda and some of these other things, Crypto Mom has to come in and evaluate service tokens on some level because I think what these meme coins are is they're a different category altogether. They're not utility, they're not security, they're service. They're providing a service. And what is the service? I own 10,000 pictures of this cat. That's what the service is in essence. And if there's a if there's a legal designation for this, it could drive a continued upswing in terms of meme coin. But at the same point in time, a lot of the stuff, like you said, North Korea, America, Iran, like you can't buy anything. There has to be some regulatory framework that's dropped in terms of like how do we play with these things? How do we work with these things? How are these legal? And is there a taxation mechanism on top of them? Because they're technically in a gray limbo right now, right? In terms of how you file, because it's neither a utility nor is it a security. And in many cases, they're filed in the Maldives and like all these other strange domiciles overseas, and it's foreign income, right? And especially if you have yourself structured where you have like some sort of foreign company and that's holding the wallets. I mean, you're only taxed on the first 80,000 that actually more than the first 80,000 that you bring back into the country because the first 80,000 is non-taxable. But a lot of this gets into the average American is going to have to start understanding this stuff in a more complicated manner as to what it is. And I think those frameworks are really what's going to set the stage for like a huge expansion of crypto inside the next 2 decades. Because
It's going to
it's a
be,
tapestry of hodgepodge right now. If it was
yeah.
organized, it'd be a friggin' freight train.
I think, yeah, you're right, and I think we're on the leading edge of the greatest economic boom that we have seen in our lifetimes. Like, we are, this timeline is amazing. The only people that are really hurt by Trump winning are the leftists who people are tuning out, at MSNBC and
Mhm.
CNN, that are going to lose their jobs and lose their networks. Boo hoo, they deserve that. The people that demand special rights and privileges based on their identity, whatever that is, this is, they think they're going to lose. Well, they're going to lose the spotlight on them, but they're actually going to benefit from everything that's going to happen too. And the women that if they're in a state where they can't have an abortion at a certain point, they have to go and drive across the state line to do. That's it. Nobody's going to lose any freedoms or rights. Everybody's going to prosper, and I think it's going to be a period we're going to look back on and go, "Holy cow, we got to experience that." Do you agree?
We will see the full frontal breadth of value of the fourth industrial revolution in the next 4 years. And it is because all these things are going to start gelling together. I mean, and think about this, okay? Because we're just talking crypto. Do you know last week China and Boston Dynamics both launched fully articulated robots, like 60, 70 articulations. You know, we're coming pretty close to something in between like the Jetsons and Battlestar Galactica in terms of where we're getting with not just robots for commerce and manufacturing, but like for some of the more dangerous things that people don't want to do. So, you know, it's going to come down to figuring out the intelligence economy all over again, the way that we did after like 2000, and making it boom the way that like the first .com boom did, because there were jobs for everyone. You could not necessarily be in tech, and there was a tech job for you.
What about gender studies degrees? Will there be jobs for them?
I think that the Obama administration driving the whole DEI gender studies piece was, look, for people that are focused and interested in that, that's interesting. But in terms of creating business, academic, and or, you know, long-term benefit, you're basically creating another bureaucracy class. And Trump has committed to imploding that bureaucracy class, which was created under Obama, which is and you know, they really screwed over like a generation of millennial kids. They told them that you could go and get these degrees and there's going to be jobs. And this is why Obama's worried about his legacy now, because his legacy was expand the bureaucracy state.
It's too
And
late
if
to
the
fix
bureaucracy
it.
state, if it's imploded under Trump,
Yeah.
there is no legacy for Obama.
You know, maybe we should make some exceptions. I've been of that mindset, Travel. I don't know what you think too about that. We should not forgive student debt, but I'm thinking those that were brainwashed into and sold this bill of goods that they could get these worthless degrees somehow. Maybe we should give them a little something for, you know, to
That's what Kamala was doing, because if you look at the ones that were being refunded, it was largely those degrees that, you know, you're like, I got a PhD in gender studies. And I'm like, fantastic. What can you do with that? Because there's no think tanks hiring you, there's no practical jobs, and outside of academia, there were no jobs,
but they can
right?
wear their pussy hat, they can shave their heads and wear blue wristbands in solidarity. So
Look,
that's
no one wants to date crazy Britney Spears. Okay, and that's really kind of like you literally identified yourself to the general population, because if you look like that, it's one of two things: either you have cancer like me, or you're crazy Britney Spears. You know,
You know, it's all, I always say that. I'm like, whenever some lady self-identifies and puts really bright color hair, you know, and dyes it like blue or green, some unnatural color, I'm like, thank you, because now I know that who you are, and the brightest colors in nature are the most poisonous ones. And so
Mhm.
you've identified yourself as being very poisonous. And so, I mean, it is what it is. I don't necessarily think that that they should get their free education. But I do think that schools that teach that ideology and only allow a certain way of thinking within the school, they should have their, like as Trump said, their research dollars eliminated.
they don't have to have their research dollars eliminated. We're already going into a population, so there's a population problem with all
Yep.
these universities right
But they
now.
all have these huge dowries that they've built up. Like Harvard has how many billions? University of Texas has how many billions of dollars that they've just stored up? But they just keep raising the price of education to the point where getting an education in a secondary school, in a university, you only really need that if you're like a lawyer or you're a doctor. Most everything else you can get for free on the internet at this point, right?
Well, it comes down to, I think we're going to have to rethink education philosophically. You know, we have to rethink homeschooling. We have to rethink the Department of Education. We have to rethink trade jobs, because you can become a millionaire being a tradesman these days. These jobs pay a tremendous amount of money. And there's these new technical jobs that are emerging that people need to focus on. But, you know, gender studies is going to go the way of a lot of some of your technical coding jobs, because we're in sixth generation languages already. Like you can prompt engineer a bunch of stuff. It's not maybe 100%, but you don't need 100 developers anymore. You maybe need 10, right? So there's this whole retooling that we weren't going to get under Kamala that I think we're going to get under Trump. But we are also going to see a lot of these small liberal arts colleges go bankrupt. And a lot of it's because there isn't going to be the replacement population. We had all these kids to send to all these colleges. Going into mid 20s, the kids of millennials, the kids of Gen Xers, there's not as many of them. And so there's no one to go to these universities, and they don't have the endowments. So what you're starting to see is entire universities up for sale. Okay. And there is going to be a culling. And I think that we're going to look back at this time in history the same way that they looked at the 1920s, because it was very identical in terms of the sexual lascivity, in terms of the propagation of ideas that don't necessarily have a material job behind them, but they're theosophical in nature, and these weird pushes. They were redriven by a war and a massive recession. We're in the middle of this like stagflation because we continue to have economic boom from tech. It's dragging parts of the industry up, but the rest of it's just, like failing. And I think all this stuff is about to change. And as it changes, the nature of like society and how we remember it's going to change.
Hey Joel, pull up usdebtclock.org,
Okay.
because here we are, we're sitting right now at $36 trillion in debt. And everybody says, oh, Trump put in so much money in debt when he was, and he did, but the
Mm-hmm.
COVID response sort of needed that. And you can go into the conspiracy theory about the whole COVID thing. And that was how they thought they were going to get him out, and all these online, all these mail-in votes. And now they're looking at, well, where do those 15 million votes go from 2020? The Republicans cheated this election. Look, how does 15 million votes disappear like that? Yeah, good question. So when we're looking at this numbers right here, and these are some really interesting numbers on this, $36 trillion in debt, how much we're
Yep.
spending per day, how much, and then even if you look over on the other side where it says, an actual dollar to silver ounce ratio now is like, realistically, the price should be $987 an ounce for silver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for an ounce of gold, that's what it should be. It's over $7,000. How much paper to silver ratio? There's 410
But
paper
this goes
ounces.
to the depreciation I was saying
Yeah.
that's happened under the
How
Fed
do we
over the
fix
past
this? How do
hundreds
we
of
get out
years.
of this? Now, I know Trump has said, oh, we have all this oil, we have all this land with no homes on it. Let's start utilizing some of that. And I think part of the problem is, we're selling all this farmland all over America to Bill Gates and to the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese, and they're all right near U.S. Military bases. And so it's like, how do we get out of this $36 trillion? Because that thing's going to teeter to a point, and then it doesn't matter who president
Well,
is.
that's the tipping point. So in the next 12 to 16 years, an additional $24 trillion worth of farmland is going to come up for sale. Okay. And I think under this administration, what we're going to see is plans to kind of keep that in families, plans to transition that to smaller farmers or farming collectives, which is really what we need, and to move away from, the ConAgras of the world, to move away from the Monsantos and the Bayers of the world. I mean, I don't know how many Americans who I don't know where if you grew up near farming, I did, but the corn seed that Bayer sells is like yay big, and it's blue, and it's encapsulated with all these pesticides, and they've patented it, and this stuff spreads, birds and the wind, and they started suing other farms. So, I think one of the biggest things that needs to happen is getting us back to clean farming, maybe organic, but clean farming, but then just really doing away with a lot of this oligarchy that's inside of our food supply. Keep food clean. Talk about like what Kennedy's saying, but a lot of this change is more than likely in the next 24 months. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see major disruption of these foreign corporations that have stuck their noses in American manufacturing and American agriculture, and in pretty much every step of the American, process of living over the course of the past 40 years. And it's a reckoning that's going to happen. And I think,
We
Joel,
for
you
sure.
pointed out best. He is not bringing in the rhinos. He is not bringing in the people that were recommended to him by the Bushes. He's not bringing in people that were recommended, by the Obamas. He's bringing in a mixed group of Americans that happen to be conservative, sometimes liberal, but they're all orientated towards one thing: fix the fucking country.
Right. And it's time to do it. Oz, this is great stuff. As we come around our final lap here, I want to talk about what you're doing now. This website that I'm sharing on the visual version of this podcast, quantumexpeditions.com. You've always been on the front lines of tech. What's this all about?
So, about 2 years ago, when I was lying in a hospital bed getting chemotherapy, I because we can do everything virtually, I partnered up with Doug Hardwick and Maddie Greenspan. You got a Muslim, a Christian, and a Jew. You got a
Walk
Texan,
into a bar, walk into a mining facility.
exactly. You got a Texan, a Yankee, and an Israeli. And we're all kind of orientated towards the same thing. Like, let's make Bitcoin great. And we've been operational. We've got a crowd fund going. We raised over $500,000. We've got some awesome swag and some awesome prizes, everything from, hats to just really cool hoodies and gear to, we're looking for someone to be the 100,000 level investor. And we're doing literally this super cool briefcase that's like Super Gordon Gecko, but for crypto. And it's got all sorts of like fun stuff inside of it. Plus, kind of like the Patrick Bateman bathrobe. But what we're building is a mixture of cheap power, and we're moving into the flare gas, stranded gas arena, which is going to give us power somewhere between a penny to 3 pennies per kilowatt. And we're raising the remainder of money to put down probably about 5 megawatts worth of mining and continue to grow and to continue to build into an institutional phase after this. This is the easiest way for anyone to get involved in crypto mining, to own a portion of the company and to sign themselves up, to be getting dividends in the future. It is SEC regulated. We can take small donors because we're under an SEC FM. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has on the Twitter. It's OZFORNY, and it's Oz Sultan X on the Insta. But you could reach out to Maddie, you could reach out to Doug, myself. We do a Spaces every Monday night with Maddie Satz. And we're
Dude,
really
nicely done
excited
on the
about this.
WeFunder. Boom, you guys almost got 500,000 already raised on that. That's
Yep.
beautiful. You're doing the
We if
506, what is it, a Reg D 506 CF through WeFunder. We're about to launch one of ours on that as well soon. That's awesome, brother.
Yeah, if we raise another 500,000, we're going to throw a rave in Texas, not too far from where the mining facility is. So, there's some big things ahead. But if you're interested in Bitcoin, you're interested in mining, the WeFunder is available off of quantumexpeditions.com. We'd love to have you as part of the project. And we're just looking to build and grow. And then on the flip side of this, I am coming off of cancer. If any of y'all projects need, strategy consulting or just work with layer ones or two or protocols, happy to help you out there too.
Excellent. Oz,
Drop
what's the
me a
best
line.
way for people to get a hold of you then?
Easiest way, email is oz@sultaninteractivegroup.com. Twitter is OZFORNY. Instagram is Oz Sultan X. And I don't really use Facebook that much anymore.
You need a damn link tree, bro.
Yeah.
Get yourself a link tree. Let people know. And my Telegram is Oz doot, and then my other is they're
Well,
all
the link
different.
tree, the link tree is on Instagram.
Okay.
And I should probably put a link tree on Twitter. Yeah, it's final 6 months of cancer treatment. I'm coming back and I'm, like gunning for some more projects and things like that. But it's been a really rough ride, I got to tell you. And
Time
also,
to
if
get
anyone,
positive, bro. You made it past a big hurdle. Your hair's growing back, and so that is in the past and it's time to move forward, and you're doing it. And you know what? You'd probably be feeling a whole lot worse if the election had turned out differently. So you got some good blessings coming your way, my dude. Glad
No,
that
I
you're still
appreciate you,
with us, my
brother.
man.
I appreciate you. One last thing is Dennis Porter's worked really hard on changing Bitcoin legislation. And if any company is looking to set up a sandbox, I am directly connected with the Republican legislators and the bipartisan Democrat legislators in Rhode Island. And we're happy to help you get set up if you're interested there.
Excellent. Thanks, buddy. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. You guys can go check it out. badco.in/751. Always a pleasure speaking with you, Oz. And let's make America great again. Make
Let's
crypto
make America
even
great
greater.
again.
Mega Black. And Oz is just one of those good guys. We're so fortunate to have met him early on. I think we met him in 2017 at one of the early conferences that we went to. It might have even been the one in Aspen. It might have been that Nexus Earth conference. And we need to ask him.
I don't think it was there.
No?
No, we didn't meet him there. I do remember meeting him at an early event, though. Really cool dude, always doing interesting stuff, and I'm glad to see that he's gotten over the hurdle of most of his medical challenges, and he's getting back in the game. You know what? You know what I saw early? Just kind of flipped the switch a little bit. So remember the NFT doodles,
Yeah.
the NFT collections?
Yeah.
So they came out today with some partnership with McDonald's, and the price of the doodles popped up about 60%. And so now they're around 2.1 ETH for one of those things, but they did some interesting partnership and the volume has exploded on it, but it hasn't gone up too much. But compared to where it used to be, the all-time high was like 24 ETH for one of these doodles. So they're starting to do stuff with McDonald's and putting them in Happy Meals and stuff. Might not be not financial advice, might not be a bad one to look into. I'm not going to buy
Buy
any.
Happy Meals. Is that the financial advice?
Buy a doodle NFT. There might be some because that's where it is. Like when you have something that has a cool, unique IP that people are tapping into, like those pudgy penguins, like bored apes, like they have the certain IP. Then speaking of IP, we got to end this pretty soon. I gotta go
You
back.
got to do your thing. Listen, two things. One, maybe we can talk about this next week. I want to talk more about alt season and my theory on that. But also, we've agreed to go to Miami, and we'll have more information on this for you guys soon. But WAGME Miami, the website wagme.miami is going to take place in Miami, January 21st through 24th. We're going to be speaking there.
Okay.
This is a great time to be going to a crypto conference. And so maybe be thinking about getting tickets for this. And we'll have more information for you probably next week.
Wow. So it looks like if we decide to go to the inauguration, it's like go to Washington, D.C., then fly down to Miami and then fly back to wherever. That's what
I'll say this. I might already have our airlines booked for the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not yours. You're on your own. So more information about that coming to you guys soon. Appreciate you for watching and or listening to the show. And we've gotten some emails from you that want the commemorative NFT we talked about last week. You can still get it if you will go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review, screen capture that review, and email it to us at badcryptopodcast@gmail.com along with your ERC20 Ethereum wallet address. And we'll be dropping those soonly.
It's a really cool one too, because I can say so because I made it. And it has the new Avengers on it. I was saying this for years. I was like, the sad thing with the world today is that we have these supervillains, but we don't really have any superheroes, right? It's like we got the World Economic Forum, like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. Like I view them as kind of supervillains, right? And maybe now there's a glimmer of hope that we do have some Avengers that can come in because we're overspending way too much money on the government. So maybe Elon can fix that. There's all these chemicals and shitty stuff in our foods. Maybe RFK can fix that and help us make America healthy again. And then maybe, there's just so many other things like, oh, and the guy who's in charge now of the border wall, right? Like, wow, like we might be fixing some of these problems that have been around since before JFK got offed. right? And then, dude, maybe having Cash Patel being the head of the CIA. Like, there's like all kinds of things that could be really awesome that could help truly make America great, maybe better than ever.
I
And
know.
so,
It's so exciting. These are great times. We hope that you guys are excited as well, and more good stuff coming your way next week, or maybe sooner if we decide to, who knows, we might up how many podcasts we're doing. We're also talking about doing some spaces.
yeah, we'll be doing some more Twitter spaces in the future. I've been doing a lot already with Mario Nawfal and his group. So some of these things have 50, 60,000 people on these spaces. And so what we're thinking of is maybe doing a space with a speaker and then launching that podcast. And then a couple days later, doing a space where you guys can come up and even ask some questions and have some conversations. So we want to keep it fun and keep innovating and growing the audience and finding ways to reach new people, because we're bad and you're even badder, and we love you guys being bad.
And you should probably, stay bad.
Who's bad?
The Bad Crypto Podcast is a production of Bad Crypto LLC. The content of the show, the videos, and the website is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any decisions as to finances, investing, trading, or anything else based on this information without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional financial advisor. Please understand that the trading of Bitcoins and alternative cryptocurrencies have potential risks involved. Anyone wishing to invest in any of the currencies or tokens mentioned on this podcast should first seek their own independent professional financial advisor.